Hey there, Fletcher from All Things Overlanding here, and today I wanted to talk about what's the real cost to get into overlanding. Now, there are a million factors that go into this, but today I'm going to talk you through some of the most important things to kind of consider when you're getting into overlanding. And I'm going to give you some price ranges and try and be as accurate as I can based on my own experience. I started very cheap with a daily driver I was kind of taking, and then I moved on to almost kind of like a full-time rig that's a full build out, and I've got more stuff coming for it. So again, I'm going to walk you through the real costs and the things to think about and consider when you're building out an overlanding rig or thinking of getting into overlandings. I'm going to give you both the budget-minded side and the big money side so that you can kind of make a decision on which one is right for you. So stay tuned to hear more on what it costs to go overlanding.
Understand where it came from, but you got it, my got it. It began in the land of the sandstorm. I fought it, though I wanted everything to do with what you give to me. Loosening my grip.
Alright guys, so as I mentioned in the intro, today I'm talking about the real cost of overlanding. What I mean by that is how much does it actually cost? What are the factors that go into it? How cheap can you do it? How much could it cost you? I see these questions all the time, especially in my newbie overlanders group, link in the description down below, where people are like, hey, you know, like I have this. I have a Jeep Grand Cherokee WK. If I want to go overlanding, what do I need and what is it going to cost? You know, I have a brand new Dodge Ram 2500. I want to go overlanding. What is it going to cost, right? So I'm going to kind of break this down into a few sections in this podcast, and I'm going to break those out for you here now. So I'm going to start with kind of, it depends on what you want to do. And I'm going to cover a bunch of different options here and kind of break it out from budget-minded all the way up to like big spender, I'm all in, I'm going to go full-time, right? But I'm going to give you those a range on all those ideas. Then next I'm going to talk about the vehicle. The vehicle obviously plays a big part in what the cost is going to be, and there are a ton of options out there. Used, new, Jeep, Nissan, Toyota, you know, all these different options out there, and you kind of got to think about a lot of those things in order to decide what's right for you and what do you want to spend. And then the third sort of part of this podcast / video is going to be comfort and convenience. A lot of people don't think about that, but really the more comfortable you're going to be, the more expenses you're going to have, the more complexity you're going to have with your setup. So I'm going to kind of walk you through that and talk a little bit about costs and options for that as well. And then we'll wrap this thing up. All right, so let's start first with what do you want to do? Right? That is probably the most important factor that will determine how much money you're going to have to spend to get into overlanding. Now, let me start, before I even get into that though, by saying I am a budget-minded overlander. I've been doing this for multiple years. I started with a very inexpensive truck, a like $7,000 Xterra, and I drove it for 4 years. It was fantastic. I put probably 60,000 miles on that thing, took it all over the country, had a ton of awesome adventures, and learned a ton about what I wanted my next vehicle to be. So keep in mind that at no point am I advocating necessarily for going out and buying a brand new, you know, Gladiator Rubicon and putting $70,000 worth of gear on it. If you want to do that, though, you totally can. There's no judgment on any side. But I'm going to try and, again, give you sort of that full range of pricing, that full range of options. But I want to encourage you to start with trying to use what you got first and really thinking about your setup before you go out and buy stuff. It's very tempting to just go out and buy a bunch of stuff. You saw this thing on YouTube, you saw this thing on Facebook, you saw that thing on Instagram. It's very easy to get sucked into that and go buy all those things, but don't do that to start. Go out on more trips, learn more about your setup, and then you can make decisions once you kind of learn more about what you want and what's most important to you. So when I start by saying it depends on what you want to do, right? If you're like me, I have a couple of kids, 11 and 14. They have sports, we have family events, we have birthdays, we have holidays, we have all this stuff. I have a certain limited amount of PTO that I can take, right? If those are factors for you, then you need to take those into account, and you also, that can influence what you're going to have to spend to do overlanding. For folks like us, maybe a one-nighter or a two-nighter once every month or two is pretty sufficient. That's a great trip. We get away, you get to go out into nature and kind of enjoy it. You get to, you know, do whatever vices you want, drink a beer or smoke a cigar or whatever you want to do, right? Get away for a little bit and just kind of decompress. If you're more of that like weekender lander style and you're just going out for 1 or 2 day trips, that can save you a ton of money. Again, my original Xterra build was basically a stock Xterra with a small lift and some bigger tires. I took that thing to Virginia, through the Appalachians. I took it to Kentucky. I took it through Michigan and Wisconsin a couple of times. I did a ton of stuff in that, and it was super capable and did pretty much everything I asked of it. Some of the times I threw an air mattress in the back and slept in the truck. Sometimes I threw a ground tent out, a $50 Coleman ground tent on the ground and slept there. Sometimes I took a $20 hammock and just spread it between two trees and I slept there for the night. So again, your whole setup can vary drastically based on your needs and kind of the type of trips that you want to take. So as far as ranges, right, and prices and stuff, again, I bought a very inexpensive few $1,000 truck. I probably spent another $1,000, $1,500 on modifications for it. Lift, tires. Tires were probably the biggest chunk of that. Kept the stock wheels for a long time. So you could reuse a lot of stuff that's already on the vehicle, but you could probably get out there and overlanding really easily for $5 to $10 grand. Again, depending on how old you want to go with a vehicle, how sort of capable you are of doing your own work and modifications. When you add in cost of shops doing work for you and things like that, of course your budget is going to go up, but you could really get out there really, really cheaply. You could also just take whatever you've got. If you're going to be doing easier roads, things like that, you're not really doing any wheeling or off-roading, you could literally take a Chevy Cruze, little compact car out, throw a tent in the back of it, and go camping. That's fine. If you're going to go on longer term trips, you're going to do more challenging terrain, you're going to need some sort of like a body on frame truck or some sort of an SUV, something that's a little bit more capable. And then obviously the more crazy you get as far as your trips, the longer term you get, the more complex you're going to be. But it depends on what you're wanting to do, right? So again, start out small, start out with some trips close to home, test out your setup, that sort of thing. Start with if you want, start with a less expensive vehicle that you can, get out and beat on and learn a lot from. I learned so much from that first Xterra, and now that's impacted my much more expensive brand new 2023 Frontier build, where I know better than to go crazy tall on the lift or crazy cheap on the lift, right? And get those crappy spacer lifts that are going to cause coil bucket contact where my upper control arm hits the coil bucket of my suspension and makes a horrible noise and is just a bad experience when you're off-roading. So as you learn what you want to do, that will impact that cost. Of course, you could just go top tier, top shelf parts. You can do that. You could spend, with an Xterra, you can spend $2,500 to $3,500 pretty easily on some full replacement suspension setups. But my question for that would be, are you doing, a lot of rock crawling? Are you doing a ton of off-roading? Does it make sense to take a $7,000 vehicle and put half the cost of that vehicle worth of suspension on it, right? So again, there are a lot of factors, and I'm not advocating one way or the other. I'm just trying to give you a range here and kind of an idea of the things to think about and what your desire is, what type of trips you want to take before you go out and buy parts for a vehicle. Same goes for gear too, right? So think about what you want to do. If you're going to be doing a lot of cold weather camping, you may want to spend some more money on some better cold weather gear, better clothing, better boots, a better sleeping bag, that sort of thing. Maybe a nicer tent if you're a ground tent camper, maybe a nicer hammock and an underquilt if you're a hammock camper, right? There are a ton of things that can go into this and can increase your cost. But if you're going to be doing a lot of winter camping, it makes a little bit more sense to spend more money on better gear for winter, right? Versus, say, lighter stuff for summer. All right, so next let's talk about the vehicle, because obviously this is going to play a huge part in your decision. If you buy a $5,000 old used Jeep Cherokee, that's one thing. If you buy a $50,000 slightly used JK, that's another thing, or Jeep Wrangler if you don't know the term JK. Or if you go out and spend $75,000 on a Ford Bronco Raptor, right? Like, you could go as nuts as you want. So that vehicle is going to play a big part. And you have to think about, do you want peace of mind from the newer vehicles, which are supposedly going to be more reliable than an older vehicle with more miles on it, right? That's kind of where my head went when I bought my new truck, is I wanted something that was newer. I was kind of tired of dealing with the older vehicles that were 15 to 20 years old and some of the maintenance stuff that came with that. Even though my trucks were really reliable, there still comes a time when something breaks, a starter breaks, an alternator goes out, and you got to get under the truck and do the work to fix that thing. But so, you could go as cheap as, like I did. You could get like an older Xterra or something. Mine had about 100,000 miles on it, and I paid about $7 grand. That was a great deal. And again, like I mentioned, it did great for me for years and years and years. If I had kept that thing, I probably would have had to spend a couple $1,000s on some maintenance to the bushings, to the, the seals and stuff. My bearings were kind of starting to go. Some of my brake lines were starting to leak. There's some maintenance that would have had to been done, but engine and transmission, that thing was solid. So if you want to save money, if you're doing like an extra vehicle in addition to your daily driver, you may want to go with like an older used vehicle. If you're comfortable doing some of the work and modifications yourself, you can save a ton of money and still get out and do some amazing overlanding trips. Or if you have one vehicle that you got to drive every day and you want it to be newer and have the nicer features, the nicer technology and stuff on it, maybe more options like Apple CarPlay, heated seats, that kind of thing, you may need to go with a newer vehicle, but be prepared to spend more money, right? 30,000 to 75,000, again, depending on the make that you're going to get, the capability of the vehicle, again, going like a Bronco Raptor versus a Bronco Sasquatch versus a base model Bronco, right? There's a huge swath of money there. You spend tens of thousands of dollars more just to get a few nicer features for like the top of the line Bronco. Same goes for like a Pro 4X Frontier versus like an SV Frontier versus like a base model Frontier, right? So you just have to think about what you really need and or want and what you're willing to spend for those conveniences, those comforts, those features. So, I mean, again, I think you could get out of here with a fully equipped overlanding vehicle for $5,000 to $10,000 pretty easily, or you could go 70 to 120,000 if you want to go full on crazy and do, you know, like a full on canopy build or a tray setup on the back of the truck. You could spend unlimited money. And again, either way works. It just depends on your budget and what you want to do and what you're comfortable spending. But you need to think about how you're going to use it, and you need to think about what vehicle you want to build off of. So then third, let's get into comfort and convenience. So if you are more that budget-minded person, right, and you're just looking for something that's going to get you out there and you're going to throw a $50 or $100 ground tent on the ground, or even maybe a $300 Gazelle on the ground, it doesn't really matter how much you spend on your sleeping stuff. It's up to you what you want, quality-wise, size-wise, ease of setup-wise. If you're just going to get out there and throw a tent up and you're just going to bring like a cooler with some ice in it and throw some food in it, and you're mostly doing shorter trips, you could get away with spending a lot less money, right? Where you get into trouble is the comfort and the convenience. So let's say that you want, like a kick-ass electrical oven. They have electrical ovens. You can power them off of DC 12-volt batteries. If you have a dual battery setup, all of a sudden now you want to run this oven, you want to bake bread when you're out at camp, or you want to cook some fancy stuff. You need a bunch of propane. You want a diesel here because you're going to go camping in winter and you really want to be toasty warm. You don't want to deal with just having a better sleeping bag and the condensation and stuff that comes with not having a diesel heater. As you add this stuff, just saying I'm going to get a diesel heater doesn't just mean you go out and spend $110 on an H-calorie diesel heater like I have. You also need some sort of a power source that you can power it off of consistently. You're going to need to buy diesel. You're going to need some sort of a way to get it into the tent. So sometimes that means buying one of those zipper things to get your tube into the tent, or modifying it so that it can get farther up into the tent, or buying a tire table to set it on so that it doesn't melt down into the snow. There's other things that come with these. And the more convenience and comfort you want, the more money you're going to have to spend. Same goes with, for example, someone made a comment on one of my videos recently that is very prevalent to this. They said, I don't know why anybody would buy a bed rack because I have an extrusion bed rack and I love it. And they're like, you get dirt and everything, you get dust and everything, you can't really use the bed of your truck, you still have to climb up a ladder into your rooftop tent. I would have just gotten a GFC, right? Like a Go Fast Campers full-on canopy with the built-in rooftop tent. Cool. You totally can do that. And he said, why would anybody buy a bed rack? My reply was cost, right? My bed rack is about a $1,300 to $1,500 bed rack, depending on how you kind of kit it out. That's very reasonable to be able to mount a rooftop tent, mount an awning, get all my stuff in the rear, still have room for my drawer system, still have room for my refrigerator, have the ability to mount things to the side of it, right? Gives me a ton of flexibility with my setup. And again, allows me to mount a clamshell style rooftop tent, which is what I wanted, on top of my truck. That total for my rooftop tent, for my bed rack, for all the other stuff, even my do-it-yourself drawer system, is probably like $3,000 worth of stuff. A GFC, like actual full canopy thing, is I think somewhere in like the range of like $7,000 to $12,000, somewhere in that ballpark. AT Habitat has one that's similar. There's the RSI Smart Cap. That thing is just a cap, so an enclosed sort of sealed cap. You're still going to have dust and stuff that's going to get past the seals of your tailgate, and so you're still not going to be totally sealed even at that. But even those, the Smart Cap itself is like $4,000, right? So right there, you're more than my entire setup with my rooftop tent, with my bed rack, with my drawer system, with my refrigerator. All that just for the Smart Cap itself. Then you got to buy a rooftop tent. You still don't have access to it. Even though it's enclosed, you still don't have access. You step up to the GFC style or the Habitat style, any of those type of things where you actually have a pass-through into your rooftop tent, you're in the 10K plus range most of the time, right? So again, you could spend as little as you want or as much as you want. And that's why I really encourage you to get out and do it before you buy anything. Go out with what you got and just try it out, because the real cost can vary so much. But again, tying this all together, think about what you want to do. Are you mostly, do you have the time and ability to go on 2-week trips very frequently? Are you a full-timer? Because if you're a full-timer and you're selling your house and you're basically going to live out of your vehicle, of course you're going to want all those conveniences. You're going to want to be able to, maybe have something like a canopy on the back of a truck where you can access your rooftop tent from inside. So if it's raining, you could use the bathroom in there, you could cook in there. It just gives you a ton of flexibility. If you're a full-timer and that's your thing, you're going to want to spend more money on it. If you're more like a weekender lander like me, or a Overlander, if you will, then you may just be cool with a bed rack and a rooftop tent, so that you can get out really quick. You can get everything set up and torn down really quick. It gives you a ton of flexibility and convenience, but it doesn't break the bank. So again, the range is infinite. You could spend $500 and get out and go camping in an old Chevy truck with a tent that you already had and a sleeping bag that you already had, all the way up to spending 150, 200 grand on a, fully built 4x4 van, or a fully built Gladiator with go fast campers on the back of it. Or you could go up to Alucab, which is in the tens of thousands of dollar range, and it is truly fully enclosed, totally dust proof, waterproof, all that stuff, but you're spending tens of thousands of dollars on it, right? So again, there are a ton of options out there, but really think about your trips, think about the vehicle that you want to base your build off of, and then think about the comfort and convenience that you want and need, right? Like, do you really need a dual battery setup? I have one, and I have a red arc controlling it. That's a lot of money, right? I do go quite a bit. I mean, obviously I talk about it enough that I made a YouTube channel about overlanding, so I'm pretty into it. But even then, I still look at it sometimes and I go, I don't know that I need this 200 amp hour house battery, plus this starter battery, plus all this red arc stuff, plus this rooftop tent, plus a full-time, mounted fridge. And do I really need that? I want to. I hope that someday I do go enough that makes a ton of sense. My 2-week Wyoming trip really showed me what that setup can do, which was awesome. But again, just think about those needs. Think about your desires and what you want to do, and then think about that in your build and be smart about it, and you can save yourself a ton of money. So I hope that was helpful for you. If it was and you're on YouTube, make sure to click that like button down below. If you're on YouTube also and you're not already subscribed, click the subscribe button, click the bell to be notified when new videos drop. I do a couple videos every week. I do a podcast every week. So if you're listening on the podcast, leave a 5-star review if you enjoyed it. That helps a ton. Also in the description down below, I'll put links to all the stuff that I sort of talked about in the video. There'll also be links to all of my social channels. So wherever you want to join the conversation, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn, wherever you want to come hang out, I'd love to have you. Definitely check those out. There's also a link to my website where I've got funny overlanding camping patches and stickers. So if you want to add some of that stuff to your collection, check that out as well. And then new on YouTube is this join button down below here. It's just a simple way to support the channel. No pressure at all. But if you want to support the channel, if you want to have some early access to videos and things like that, that is an option down there. Check that out. And then last but not least, there are links to my Patreon group where we have a 24/7 Discord. We chat all the time. It's a ton of fun, great group of people. And we do a couple trips every year now. We're starting to do some trips, and that's going to be a ton of fun going forward. And then there's the Newbie Overlanders group, which again, totally free to join, Facebook group. Over 14,000 members at this point, and it's growing every day, and everybody's super helpful. So if you're newer especially and you want a place to sort of hang out and help people, that may be a good place to start. But again, thanks for watching, thanks for listening, and we'll see you next week.